by the church. We'll have the details on that coming up in just a little bit. In a few minutes, we will take you to Tampa, where city officials talking about lessons learned from last year as we get ready for the start of a new hurricane season. All that coming up in just a couple of minutes. But we begin today with a, quote, towering figure in Florida politics and higher education dying at the age of 81. We are talking about John Thrasher, who died after a battle with cancer, a former House Speaker, a state senator at one point, Florida State University president as well, and a man with a lot of roles and a lot of responsibilities and a lot of impacts as well in a lot of ways here in Florida. And joining us live now via Zoom to talk about this is James Call, state capitol reporter with the Tallahassee Democrat. And James, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
James, it didn't take long for reactions to begin pouring in for after learning of the death of John Thrasher. Just kind of talk to us a little bit about his life and the many roles that he held.
Well, he did play many roles here in Florida and here in Tallahassee. You know, we are a city, Tallahassee is a city built on politics, and former President Thrasher was a Republican, and Tallahassee is a very Democratic city, 2-1 Democratic, but as president of Florida State University, this towering figure in the modern Republican Party that helped, build the Republican Party into a majority party here in Florida, he won over the city. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone today with a negative comment about Mr. Thrasher. In fact, the one detractor that I did find even prefaced his remarks by saying it wasn't entirely John Thrasher's fault that he was such a controversial figure when he first became president of FSU. He was a Speaker of the House in 1998 when the Republicans took control of all of Florida government. And he went on to become a chair of the Republican Party of Florida, rescued them from a scandal and a financial mess, and raised more than $50 million for the Republican Party. And I think it was 2003 or 2004. And then he went into the Senate, where he was chair of the Rules Committee, which is a very powerful committee. I mean, it's in the Rules Committee that the bills are cleared to go to the full Senate for a debate and on to the governor. So Mr. Thrasher was very skilled politician and became a beloved figure here in Tallahassee and for Florida State. Excuse me.
James, how do you think he was able to have such a big impact? You talk about him winning over so many people and winning over that city. How do you think he was able to do that? Why was he able to do that?
Well, Mary Coburn was the vice president of student affairs when John Thrasher was appointed president, and that appointment roiled the campus with the campus. There was a seminal uprising in the making. Earlier that year, I believe it was 2004, Thrasher had sponsored a bill to split the Florida A&M University, Florida State University School of Engineering in two institutions, to two separate schools. People used that to charge him as being a racist. He was so steep in Republican politics and such a successful fundraiser for Republican politics that the fear among the faculty was that John Thrasher represented a Trojan horse to corporatize public education in Florida. So the campus was in an uproar. Mary Coburn, who was the vice president of student affairs, arranged meetings between Thrasher and his detractors. And at those meetings, they were very, very vicious. Very vicious things were said and hurled at Thrasher. And he sat there and he listened. And he listened. And Coburn said that, and she served 5 former presidents of Florida State University. She said she had never had a president who was such a good listener. Thrasher didn't argue with the students or with the faculty. He took notes on what they were saying about why he wasn't qualified to be their president, and he listened. And she said that he was an excellent sounding board. And as time went on, his warmth and compassion won people over, that they just attracted people to him. She said as time went on, Coburn said that she could not go anywhere with John Thrasher without students, parents, alumni, and others asking for him to pose for a picture with him, for a photo with him. Um, it is a remarkable story because Tallahassee lives, eats, and breathes politics. The residents of Tallahassee are able to turn almost any issue into a political issue, and then we sit around and argue and debate it for years. And he won them over. It really is a remarkable story that calling people around. I have a list here of more than 16 different adjectives used by different folks I've talked today to describe him, and they are the type of I think we'd all wish that people would remember us this way. They call him a visionary, a statesman, a leader among leaders, integrity. It's a quite interesting story because I remember a senator who in debate could cut people off at their knees and seemed to enjoy it. But as an educator, a different side of him emerged.
You mentioned some of those adjectives. What do you believe is his legacy today in Tallahassee and in the state of Florida?
People remember John Thrasher. Former lawmakers and current lawmakers remember John Thrasher as a mentor who fought the good fight.
That's a high praise.
And the other thing is, and this is quite interesting to me. He was raised as poor. I mean, came from a poor background. Went into the army, and he was a dedicated, committed supporter of public education. Bill Montford, who for many years was the dean of education in the Florida Senate, said that John Thrasher believed that the best avenue to help your fellow man was through public education. So it's a skilled politician who believed in education. That's his legacy.
And those tributes pouring in, continuing to pour in. James Call, state capitol reporter with the Tallahassee Democrat. We appreciate you putting all that in perspective for us, and thanks for joining us here on Florida Live today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this. in about 5 seconds.
Okay.
Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is a time now for our Tampa Connection. For that, we go to Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay. And Nancy, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thanks for having me, Garrett. As we both know, as every Floridian probably knows, hurricane season begins on Sunday. After last year's storm season, it's not something any of us want to think about, but obviously we do have to be prepared. And about 10 minutes ago, the city of Tampa started talking about, they're holding a press conference, talking about lessons they learned during the 2024 hurricane season and what they've done to prepare for the 2025 hurricane season. As I mentioned, this press conference did begin about 10 minutes ago with Tampa Mayor Jane Castor kicking it off. It's expected to go for about an hour, so let's listen in live to hear more about what the city of Tampa has done to prepare and what they want residents to know about this upcoming season.
Thank you very much. And next up is Tampa Fire Rescue Chief Barbara Tripp. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, today we are all here because we're getting prepared. We know this weekend, June 1st, is the start of hurricane season. So the reason we're here, because 2024 was definitely a challenging year. If you were not affected, I'm quite sure you knew someone that was affected by the storm. Even though the storm did not impact us directly, but we were impacted indirectly with the aftermath, even before or after the storm passes. So we're here today to make sure you all understand that we are preparing, and we want you all to prepare as well. With that, the mayor mentioned about preparation. Currently, Tampa Fire Rescue have been having tabletop exercises with local as well as state departments to make sure that we're prepared for this season. We also want you all to be prepared by looking on the website and getting information when it comes to whether it's a hang tag, if you're in a flood zone or evacuation zone. Also, your kit. What is your kit should be, what should be inside of your kit? You know, you should prepare for at least 72 hours. With the storms from last year, we know that the power was out for an extended period of time, and that affected a lot of individuals. We talk about generators. Generators is something that should be used outdoors, not in your garage, in a well-ventilated area that should not be close to your AC to be able to absorb any of the carbon monoxide. We know carbon monoxide is the silent killer. We want everyone, if you do have a generator, invest into a carbon monoxide meter. Make sure that your family is safe, plan ahead. Get in touch with relatives in the area. Make sure that they're safe as well. This is all preparing you all. Tampa Fire Rescue, along with Tampa Police Department, along with all of the other first responders are here 24/7 to assist you. But when conditions get harsh, it is a danger for us to come out. So we want you all to make sure you listen to local and state authorities. When it's time to evacuate, please evacuate. We will have multiple shelters open that would be family friendly with pets, as well as your family to be able to come in. Take advantage of that. Don't wait until the end and something happened and you make the statement, I wish I would have left. Make sure to continue to listen to the local authorities as we continue to prepare through the season. Electrical vehicles has been a challenge for many reasons for the fire service as well as with the storms. We know they have the lithium batteries, and of course, if they get on fire, it takes a lot of water to get out. If you have an electrical vehicle, make sure that you try to store that vehicle above ground, higher levels. Sometimes there are garages that are open that you can go ahead and store that vehicle. Do not charge that vehicle when a storm is coming through. We also talked about the hurricane hang tags. You can visit the site, tampa.gov/hang tag, to get information to be able to return to your site with clearance through local law enforcement for that. This Saturday, tomorrow, at Barksdale, We will have a hurricane expo. We asking the community to come out. You can get some free sandbags. You can go online and prepare and register to get your sandbags as well. But we will have a lot of vendors out there to help prepare you for this 2025 hurricane season. Once again, we want everyone to be safe, and just know that the city of Tampa is definitely preparing for our community. With that, I'd like to introduce Police Chief Ruth Kate.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Chief Burkhall, I want to ensure that everybody is aware that the Tampa Police Department is ready and prepared for this hurricane season. I know last year was difficult, and we worked tirelessly along with all of our other city partners to make sure that everybody was safe, including water rescues. We made more than 100 water rescues that saved hundreds of people and even 16 pets. That was very important to the families. Later, after today, you'll be able to see some of our new equipment. We were able to acquire 2 SHRP vehicles, one for the Tampa Fire Rescue and one for the Tampa Police Department. These are all-terrain vehicles that can go from land into water, and they will help rescue people. So we hope that you go out and see those. In addition to that, know your evacuation zones. I know we talked about having your evacuation kits, but be ready to take that evacuation route when necessary. It's going to be very difficult for first responders to get to you once the storm hits, but we will do our best, and we will use our new SHRP vehicles to get there. In addition to that, sign up for Alert Tampa. The mayor told you could go to tampa.gov/hurricane. You can also go to tampa.gov/alert-tampa, and there's 3 tabs there, one for Alert Tampa, one for Special Needs Registry, and one for Emergency Management. We also would like you to apply for emergency services for Special Needs Registry. This is all confidential. So if you have someone that's on oxygen or someone that we need to know that has some sort of special needs or medical needs, go to the registry and register. And that's all under tampa.gov/alert-tampa. Now I would like to introduce our representative from TECO, Ms. Sherry.
Tampa Electric works year-round in anticipation of hurricane season. We're doing things like trimming trees and inspecting and installing stronger poles. We're also installing some power lines underground in anticipation of power outages. We invest hundreds of millions of dollars a year to make our system more resilient to severe weather. And our storm protection program helps our system in anticipation of hurricanes. It means fewer outages for customers and shorter outages after extreme weather. Since that program began, we have converted more than 200 miles of overhead power lines under the ground, and those investments are working. Outages are shorter and less frequent, and tree-related outages are significantly reduced. Tampa Electric learns lessons from every storm, and last year, of course, was a doozy for everyone here. Since then, we've enhanced our outage map technology to improve its availability and response, even during times of high traffic. We now provide mobile safety orientation for those out-of-state power crews who are coming in to help us. This makes it easier for them to get into the field faster to help restore your power faster. And we also have expanded our flood protection. So we, for certain key substations, we had planned to install flood walls or raise key equipment, and we've tripled the number of substations. We're going to be doing that based on the response to Hurricane Helene with the floodwaters and the storm surge. We encourage all of our customers to have a personal storm plan, as everyone has mentioned up here.
Representatives with TECO there talking about some of the preparations that they have made ahead of this hurricane season. We also heard from the Tampa Assistant Police Chief and also from the Tampa Fire Chief. Talking about some of those lessons learned, Nancy, because we know the impact from last year. I certainly don't want a repeat of that, but you have to be ready if things do happen.
Yes, that's right. It seems like the main message coming out of today's press conference is to be prepared. Everyone's really encouraging residents to have their emergency kit, have that kit ready. They are encouraging everyone to prepare for at least 72 hours. Now, the other big thing that everybody at this press conference keeps mentioning is to know your evacuation zone. That is so important, especially in Tampa, because good portion of the city, especially down in South Tampa on the water, they are in an evacuation zone. So it's really important to know which evacuation zone you are in and how you are preparing to leave the city should a hurricane threaten the area and they give those orders to evacuate. Another thing that was mentioned, if you or a loved one have special needs and will be needing to go to a shelter, it's important to register on the City of Tampa's website so that way they can have a spot ready for you. And they also have more information online about some of the things that you will need to prepare to bring with you to those shelters. Now, we also heard about talking about some of those water rescues that did happen during the 2024 hurricane season. The City of Tampa, they said that they performed over 100 water rescues. They saved more than 100 people, and they also rescued about 16 pets. I don't know if you remember, Garrett, but there was this photo that ended up going viral after one of last year's hurricanes of a first responder and a St. Bernard, and that St. Bernard was looking at that first responder so lovingly because he did rescue not only the humans but also the pets as well. And after today's press conference, the City of Tampa will be showing off some of their new high water vehicles so that they will be able to do these rescues and do even more of these rescues during this hurricane season. And hopefully they will not be needing those vehicles, but they are going to be showing them off here in a little bit. On Fox13News.com, we do have all the information that you need to prepare for a hurricane. We do have links online where you can go and you can learn your evacuation zone for every county in the Bay Area. We also have information about what you should prepare, what you need to pack in your emergency kit. Again, you do want to have enough stuff for at least 72 hours, not just for yourself and for your children or perhaps for your parents, but you also want to prepare for your pets. And we do have all of that information at Fox13News.com. Garrett?
Yeah, a lot of great and helpful information. Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon for our Tampa Connection.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon. Earlier today, we heard from an attorney announcing a lawsuit being filed against the Diocese of Orlando, accusing the church of covering up sexual abuse by a former priest. You may remember in January of 2024 when police say Brandon Capus, a 24-year-old, murdered Father Robert Hefner, the priest's sister, and also his own grandfather before shooting 2 police officers and ending up being shot and killed by law enforcement himself. Again, that was January of 2024. At the time, investigators didn't have a reason for that attack. Then Palm Bay police said earlier this year that new evidence suggests Capus may have been sexually abused by that priest, Robert Hefner. Today at a news conference, we heard from attorneys at the Herman Law, which is a nationally known law firm representing victims of sexual abuse, where a second alleged victim spoke. His name was Sean. He claims he was molested as a 7th grader and was also friends with Brandon Capus. I want to play for you some of that news conference from a little bit ago here in Orlando.
My name is Jeff Herman. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Herman Law. Our firm exclusively represents victims of sexual abuse in Florida and around the country. And we called this press conference today to announce the filing of a very important case. I'm here with my client, Sean, who is using his name in a very, very brave manner. And we want to talk about some very disturbing things that are related to this case. And this is a case against the Catholic Church. It's a case against the Diocese of Orlando, and specifically the abuse that my client suffered at St. Joseph Catholic Church and the school, as we allege in the complaint. So this complaint was filed today, and what we allege in this case is the following storyline. Sean was in 7th grade in the 2012-2013 school year. Prior to that, he had been at the school for several years where he met Father Bob Hefner, who was the priest at the parish and at the school. And Sean was an altar server. Sean was a student. And during his confessions, Father Bob began to explore sexual issues and began to groom Sean. And then eventually started to molest Sean, as we allege in the complaint. Now, this abuse started around the 2012-13 school year and continued all the way through the beginning of 9th grade. But I mentioned there's some disturbing things about the case, and this is one of those facts. During the 2012-2013 school year, we have spoken to a witness who was another student in the class. And this other student began to have concerns about Father Bob to himself and others. And this student specifically went to the school counselor, and as we allege, was Dr. Gilbert, and he told Dr. Gilbert, "I'm concerned about Father Bob. I think something's going on. And I see Father Bob is always taking Sean and another boy, Brandon, into classrooms alone. And I think he's doing something to the boys." Unfortunately, nothing happened to stop Father Bob. And the abuse continued. Now, eventually, during the 9th grade, it stopped. And Sean suffered in silence for many years. One of the things that is also very disturbing about this case is that one of the locations where Sean was being sexually molested was Father Bob's home. that he shared with his sister Sally, who was also a staff member at the St. Joseph Catholic School. And Sean and his friend Brandon would come over to do yard work for Father Bob, and also he would have them engage in other activities, including bringing Sean into his bedroom alone, where he would molest him. Now, what Sean knows is that when he would come out of the bedroom, his friend Brandon would go in, and sometimes Sally would be making strawberry jam with him while the Father Bob was in the bedroom with his friend. When Sean was in the bedroom, he was molested. And this happened again and again and again. Now, one of the things we keep hearing from the Catholic Church is how they are different and how they are transparent. Well, I have a lot of questions for the Bishop of Orlando. When, as we all know, there was a shooting, a tragic shooting last year, a tragedy on so many levels, including the fact that some police officers were injured. And Father Bob and his sister were both shot and killed by Brandon. The diocese made a statement at the time about cautioning the public not to speculate. Well, you can't ask people not to speculate when you're hiding the truth. Why hasn't the church come clean about what they knew about Father Bob? I'm demanding that they produce this file, not only in this lawsuit, which I will get, but the public and the parishioners have a right to know the truth. People are operating in silence right now, and it's well past time where we can continue to live in a society where predators are being protected. Based on what we allege in this complaint, this is a cover-up of the highest level. And Sean should have been spared. We're looking into allegations that even predate that as part of our investigation. And we will have a lot of questions that we will have answered. This is a timeline of Father Bob's time with the Diocese of Orlando. Now you'll notice here, Father Bob retired in 2016. Well, we have spoken to people who tell us that he was forced to retire because of some concerns that had come forward. And that in fact, at one point, Father Bob returned to the church and he was escorted off the property. Why didn't the bishop talk about that last year when he said don't speculate? So here we are today, and Sean has bravely come forward to stand up for himself, to seek justice, and really on behalf of other potential victims that are out there, so that they don't have to suffer in silence alone and they can get help.
Now, we reached out to the Diocese of Orlando for responses to specific claims and allegations that were made in that lawsuit, in that civil complaint that has been filed in court today. They did not address those specific questions, instead sending us this statement, quote, "The allegations reflected on the Herman Law Post reiterates prior news stories arising out of this tragic shooting event. The Diocese of Orlando was not made aware of any allegations of abuse during Father Robert Hefner's pastoral leadership, nor after he retired in 2016. We continue to pray for the Palm Bay and St. Joseph communities and all involved." We're going to take a break here on Fox 35 News Plus, on Florida Live, but we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. Governor Ron DeSantis was in Jupiter today holding a news conference at a Home Depot hardware store there, where he was talking about getting ready for hurricane season. We've seen a number of lawmakers and officials hold those news conferences this week ahead of the official start of hurricane season coming up on Sunday, June 1st. After he talked about all of that, he was joined by Kevin Guthrie with the Division of Emergency Management. He also took some questions from reporters where he talked about the budget impasse in Tallahassee right now, and also how that's impacting sales tax holidays for things like hurricane preparedness and other things. He also talked about disaster response and the future of FEMA, and also the debate over trying to on whether that response could be pushed off to the states. Here's some of what Governor DeSantis had to say earlier today.
On the federal disaster, what I have said, because there's been controversy with President Trump saying he doesn't want FEMA, he wants to do. And what I've pointed out is in my discussions with him, what he's objecting to is the FEMA bureaucracy. I think it's the administration's intent to block grant money to the states and let us administer it. So all the things that FEMA does, where you have individual assistance, where you have response or reimbursements for things like debris removal, if you just calculated typical hurricane how much, and you gave us 80 cents on the dollar on that, but cut out the bureaucracy, I'll bet you that money would actually go further. So I am not at all opposed to our citizens utilizing the levers available. And in fact, we utilize the levers available. They have this whole apparatus that's in federal statute. So when a disaster comes, if there's a lever for me to push to be able to get support for the state, I do that. That's different, though, when you're talking about an infrastructure bill that was really trying to do social engineering, when you're talking about them trying to make us have to do all this people coming across the border. Those are just things that were totally contrary to our policies. Federal government, whatever the role it plays in disaster response, if there are levers available to me as governor that I can pull to help people in Florida get what they need, I will pull those levers. So we're not saying, and in fact, I've told my message to the president, send us the money. Send us the money and let us administer it. Now, I don't think that's going to happen this hurricane season, because I think the reality is there's going to need to be more lead up than the time they've had in office thus far. But if they eventually get to that place, I think you could potentially remove a lot of the heartache in these post-storm things. You know, I'm talking about Helene and Milton. We're cleaning debris, restoring power, we're doing all this. Well, then what happens is these homeowners end up in this stasis with having to deal with FEMA. Was this FEMA, this? And it's all about bureaucracy and red tape. And I'm just like, you know what? Like, I get it, but why don't we just say, you know, there's certain things, okay, distribute money to people, and then let them make decisions on the basis of this. To try to micromanage everything, it just paralyzes the response. So I think that's what a lot of people have been frustrated with. I think that's what the president's frustrated with. But that, I would say, that's definitely different than what we've done in DOGE, where we're rejecting federal money with strings attached. We're also working with our universities, because we're doging them too. You know, they're now having to unwind some of the grants that came down that were DEI. We eliminated DEI in Florida, so you have that. But I would say that's totally different than the disaster situation. So we will have something in effect from a budget and tax perspective by the end of this month, because that's the end of the fiscal year. And there's no way that we are going to allow the legislature to just not do their job and get this done for the people of Florida. This is the one responsibility they have as legislators. And, you know, I say that, I mean, the four we have here, if it was up to them, this would have been done, right? I mean, like, we're just dealing with issues. It is what it is. And the Senate is having to deal with some of these issues. Some of these rank and file House members, I think they're left in the dark. I don't think that they get a lot of insight into what's going on. But I can tell you the fact that we're now here basically to June for a legislative session that ended in early May, this was totally avoidable. It was not something that needed to happen. You guys should already be enjoying tax holidays right now. And you'd be saving, I mean, if you're somebody that's like gung-ho, I'm going to take care of my home and you're like a Home Depot shopper, you will save a lot of money, right? Because there's other things that you'd buy. Second Amendment people that go to like the range, like they save a lot of money. Marine fuel, I mean, it's like, this is like great stuff for Florida over the summer. Parents get the back to school tax holiday that's coming up in August. So there's a lot of good stuff that needs to be done. And then I've also called for rebates on property taxes for Florida homesteaders. At least for middle class we can do this year, right? Let's do that. So this can all be done, and it will be done. But as governor, I have different budget priorities, but most of the priorities I've had have been implemented over 6 years. All the members of the legislature have voted for all the things that I asked for. They voted to raise teacher salaries. They voted to help law enforcement. They voted to restore the Everglades. They voted to do K-12 school choice and fund our school districts. All the things we've done better than any state in the country. New York has 3 million fewer people than the state of Florida now, and yet their budget is more than twice the size of our budget. And yet, do they have better roads than Florida? No. Better education? No. Do they have better services? I don't know. You tell me. Would you rather go to the DMV in Jupiter, or would you rather be in New York getting a license? I think most people know. So we've done that. We have the lowest number of state employees per capita in the country. You look at like DOJ in the federal government, you got massive bureaucratic footprint. Not in Florida. We have a light footprint. We have the second lowest spending per capita in the entire country. If you look at the state's debt, just since I've been governor in 2019, we've paid off 41% of our state's debt, accumulated over 180 years of being a state, paid off. We have the lowest per capita debt in the country. So the reason why I think it doesn't speak well to some of the people that are involved and that have brought them to this point is because all you really had to do was copy and paste what's been done. The voters are not asking you to upend the apple cart. They're asking you to build off the success. That's the mandate that I have as governor. That's the mandate that these reps have as governor. We have the biggest Republican majority in the House of Representatives in the history of the state of Florida. There's a lot of those people that wouldn't have been there if it weren't for the success, that we've gotten in Florida. And who knows what happens going forward. But it's just, you know what you need to do. The formula is very clear. No one's been friendlier to taxpayers than we have, and we want to do more now with helping you with local property tax. No one's done better to support education and environment and road building and our ports and our beaches and all these things. And yet we're doing it on a great budget, and we're doing it in ways that we're the model for people in the country. You had the Treasury Secretary of the United States saying, be less like New York and more like Florida. If the country was more like Florida, we'd be better off than if we were like New York. Thanks, everybody. God bless.
As Governor Ron DeSantis earlier today in Jupiter. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us. Two security breaches and compromises of some software programs this week were announced of some tools that your business or company might be using. Talked with Matt Rose, the CXO of TechRage IT.
On the Screen Connect one, because that's probably the more used tool out there. It's a pretty popular tool in IT support communities. There's not a lot known. The company's been pretty tight-lipped about it. All they've said so far is that only a small number of clients have been notified that they were part of the compromise. But what's so far shown is that the compromise occurred late, like in November of 2024, and it was only discovered in the last few days. Which kind of goes to underscore how long somebody can live in these environments without necessarily, doing anything or really being detected, which is kind of scary. And the simple help, I think the jury's still out a little bit more on that one, but it looks like that was one where they got in also again a few months ago, and that one looked like it was a little more nefarious. They tried to run some scripts to actually potentially do some damage to computers that are beyond them. And to give a quick kind of idea about these tools are meant to make IT companies, IT staff have an easier time remoting in. If you work at a company and somebody remotes in to check on your computer, it's usually via one of these tools that are kind of, for the most part, usually always connected, if you will. So when if they get breached, it's pretty terrifying. There's been a few of these over the years that people know about, and some of them have had some pretty substantial issues, but it's kind of the same thing as someone having full access to your computer.
Yeah.
So when these happen, they're a big deal.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, it seems like the risks of something like this are pretty major because, like you said, it's basically like you're sitting in front of my computer with my keyboard and my mouse. Yeah,
and it's not even just that. It's that, again, the balance here, and it's kind of, I'm careful to say, because we run a company where we rely on tools like this. The balance is that it helps us support, your IT person, support you as your business, making sure your computer is running. They can run scripts to make sure, temporary files, things like you're running efficiently, but they don't necessarily even have to be on your computer. Like, they can run things in the back end that happen. And that's the almost more terrifying thing is, maybe they're trying to spy on what you're doing, but it's almost more that potentially could pull logs and things like that if they really wanted to do something really nefarious. In the ConnectWise one, the weird thing is the reports are that it was a nation state actor. And I don't think I've seen any reports that there was ransomware deployed or anything of that nature, which is kind of interesting. And I think that's, all the ConnectWise has said is that a large security firm named Mandiant is looking into it, and that they're kind of going through their security. So they're rightly so being, tight-lipped. But I think a lot of people have a lot of questions as to what exactly did they do in there for the past 7 months.
When you say in a nation state actor, I mean, you're talking potentially a government-backed, kind of hacking entity or something here that is looking to do this. I think that is kind of, can be eye-opening in some ways to hear and think about governments being involved in activities like this for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's always been, again, we've always said, well, we're not going to talk politics here, but there's enough kind of always worry, and you hear this and that about. So, but yeah, there's definitely there. I mean, there's no doubt that there are nations out there that obviously go to war, but then there's cyber kind of warfare as well as physical. And yeah, there's definitely something that could be going on here. But again, that detail is not being released. My guess is there's conversations between these companies and the FBI and whatnot to see what can be released. But it's not always just that they want to ransomware your computer and get some money. In some cases, they're hoping to get specific customers. And that's my thought process here. If it was a small number of customers who are breached, if it was a nation state, were they actually specifically trying to find a customer who had access to something they were really looking for?
And as you said, it had really been in the system for a while. Is there any way that would show up, or is it really possible to completely kind of fly under the radar for months?
I mean, it's, you know, again, not knowing the exact situation, I want to say that you should be able to find them, but and again, this is where there's researchers that all they do all day long is look for indicators of compromise, which is basically a term for saying that you know that someone's in your system. And there's just some ways where they're hiding in plain sight. There's a term called living on the land, which is basically you're kind of in there in a program someone uses. And it's why it's so important to understand that if you use various products, that if they have a vulnerability, why you should patch and why you should pay attention to those. And it's a lot of work, but it's also why the average company doesn't know that they're breached for typically about 6 months or longer. And we've talked about it before, even just, you know, a few weeks ago. There's no such thing as being, you know, fully hack proof or fully protected. You have to have protections in place. And again, without the detail, I can't say why these two got through, but they're, you know, I know for a fact ConnectWise is a very, you know, astute company when it comes to security. And I hope there's some data that comes out after this. I just don't know what legally they'll be able to say publicly.
And it probably makes it even more important to have those layers of security in place because, you know, it's these people, these bad actors can fly under the radar inside the system for so long. So what is the takeaway here for folks?
Yeah, the takeaway is kind of the same thing we've kind of mentioned a lot is, you know, you need to, if you know, talk to your IT people, make sure that they're kind of aware. I would hope that all of them are. IT companies should be. But it also is really it's something for any person, whether you're just using a personal computer, whether you're using a business computer, you really have to be careful to understand what you're downloading, what you're using, and where it's hosted. You know, just to quickly say on the ConnectWise side, there's a thing called self-hosted and there's cloud-hosted. So some people in IT companies actually have a server in their office where they're running this tool, which is great, good and bad, because you're your own protection, but maybe you're not going to have some of the other ones happen. So you need to know what you're doing. You need to look at those third parties, and it can be something as minimal as you're using a product as obvious as Adobe Acrobat, and it can be these weird little games or things you might download or edge or, you know, browsers for your you know, extensions for your web browser. So you just have to really think that just clicking and downloading and, you know, checking with IT, is this safe, are critically important things to do. And your company should really understand what you're using from a third party standpoint.
Good things to keep in mind. Thanks for joining us today on Florida Live as we wrap up for today and for the weekend. Leave you with this view of downtown Orlando. You can see more storms on the horizon there as they continue to move through our area. Thanks for joining us.
Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon to you and welcome into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon live on Fox Local, fox13news.com, fox35orlando.com, and also on YouTube. We appreciate you joining us here. A lot to get to in this next